Well, a major development in the tangled web of that failed Russian coup from earlier this summer.
The reported death of the Wagner mercenary group leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, in a plane crash yesterday.
Yevgeny Prigozhin has been listed among passengers on board a plane that crashed just north of Moscow.
It's been confirmed that Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner Group, was on board the private jet that crashed near Moscow.
And let me underline that. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Russian Wagner mercenary group, may now be dead, almost exactly 2 months after he led a failed rebellion against Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's what we know. The plane, Prigozhin's private plane, 10 people on board, including him, so 6 other passengers and 3 crew. They were traveling midday from Moscow to St. Petersburg, which is typically around an hour-and-a-half flight, when, according to records, about halfway through the flight, it went down in a small village of Tver region. On the Wagner-linked Telegram channel Grey Zone, local residents reported hearing 2 loud bangs, seeing 2 vapor trails, then the plane coming down. Prigozhin is presumed to be dead, but all of this is, of course, very difficult to confirm. This video is being widely shared as an alleged eyewitness account of the plane going down. You can look for yourself. It appears that the plane only has 1 wing. It's falling fast, then it reportedly burst into flames as soon as it hit the ground. Multiple news organizations have reported 8 bodies were recovered. And Russia's Civil Aviation Authority has confirmed Prigozhin's name was on the passenger list.
Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner PMC, Wagner Private Military Company, was among those on board, or was at least listed as among those people on board. That is being confirmed, or rather written about, by multiple Russian media accounts as we speak.
Now, there is very much an open question about what really happened here. Was this an accident? Was it an assassination? Is he truly dead, or might he be alive? As recently as this week, Prigozhin posted this video, reportedly from Africa. And although he'd agreed to be exiled to Belarus, it seemed he was wandering free. It was always a mystery how a man that had humiliated Vladimir Putin by marching his troops on Moscow, whom Putin had accused of treachery and betrayal, had just been let go.
Putin respects loyalty, but he certainly cannot tolerate disloyalty. And Prigozhin, although he thought he was being careful, saying, my mutiny is against the Ministry of Defense, not you, Putin. I remain loyal to you. He thought he could get away with that, but apparently it appears he did not.
U.S. President Joe Biden seemed to have suspicions when asked by reporters.
I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised. There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer.
And to be perfectly honest, very few people know enough to know the answer. The Kremlin has said nothing. Same with the Russian Defense Ministry. There's also no proof yet, beyond the word of the Russian Aviation Authority, that Prigozhin was even on the plane. No one confirmed he boarded it, and as of now, his remains have not been recovered.
We don't have evidence yet that he is dead, but it is entirely predictable that his lifespan shortened radically once he took up arms and marched troops towards Moscow.
Yes, all of this started with those fateful 24 hours that captured the attention of the world and, as many are speculating, made retaliation and retribution inevitable.
I think the rebellion itself, not really a rebellion, more a military mutiny is what we should call it, was a direct threat to Putin's power. It was a threat to the military hierarchy, and it was a threat to the established order in this situation. It is entirely possible that Putin himself wanted Prigozhin dead.
The world has just borne witness to an armed uprising that was as stunning as it was short-lived.
It has, by any estimation, been an extraordinary last 24 hours in Russia.
There's been a dramatic escalation in tensions between Russia's military and the Wagner mercenary group, raising fears it could lead to a civil war in Russia.
Civil war in a country that has locked itself for the last year into a bitter, bloody invasion of Ukraine. What happened this weekend has been called the single greatest exposure of weakness, perhaps the greatest challenge we have seen directly to Russian President Vladimir Putin in the 20-plus years he has ruled the country.
But then, this evening, there was a sudden change, and the crisis seemed to be over.
Even days later, we're all sort of scratching our heads, asking the same question. What on earth happened? I'll explain how it all went down and what it means when you push a country to the brink only to pull it right back. Yevgeny Prigozhin runs the Wagner Group. That's a paramilitary group of mercenaries that Russia has increasingly relied upon to do violent work. It is effective and brutal, with great access to money, power, and numbers. In capturing the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, Prigozhin has said 20,000 of his own men died. Now, depending on whose numbers you believe, maybe 1 in 10 people killed in this war are Wagner Group soldiers. And that's taking both sides, even civilians, into account. I say this because it says a lot about Prigozhin's stake in all of this. You know, that the whole war effort has stalled so badly, has forced Prigozhin into an increasingly difficult and desperate situation. Adding to this is that he is very much a man on the clock. Putin's top officials have been calling for groups like Wagner to be folded into the Russian military, and Putin himself has given the green light.
Значит, первое, что нужно сделать, заключить контракты со всеми добровольными объединениями, так? Иначе социальная гарантия со стороны государства не возникает. И второе, нужно внести некоторые изменения в закон. И то, и другое будет сделано.
This has outraged Prigozhin. The idea of having, everything he's worked for absorbed into the broader Russian command structure is a highly offensive idea to him. And keep in mind, this is a man who has spent years building his own political and military influence, and who may see himself more as a partner to Putin than a subordinate, a relationship cultivated over some 30 years. He believes Russia's Ministry of Defense is incapable of commanding a group like his.
He also accused the Russian military of providing Putin with inaccurate information about the status of the war and claimed that Russia is, in fact, losing ground on the battlefield.
For months now, Prigozhin has accused Russia's military leadership of gross incompetence, failing to properly support his mercenaries with the gear and the ammo that they need to fight. They're being starved, he says, in a move driven by jealousy. Military leaders who see him as a rival, and if not a threat, an outright enemy. Talking about his own dead soldiers, Prigozhin is reported to have once said, "These are someone's fathers and someone's sons. The scum that doesn't give us ammunition will eat their guts in hell." On the face of it, the breaking point appears to be when Prigozhin claims Russia's military launched a direct assault on his soldiers, killing many. This was late Friday. What followed unfolded at lightning speed. Prigozhin announced his army, tens of thousands strong, would reverse course, backing out of Ukraine, marching directly on Moscow.
This is how the day began. In the Russian city of Rostov, armed men and armor on the streets.
7 часов 30 минут утра под контролем военные объекты Ростова, в том числе аэродром.
Rostov-on-Don is about 12 hours drive south of Moscow. It is the primary Russian staging ground for the war in Ukraine. And Prigozhin bragged that he was able to capture it without firing a single shot. Russia issued a warrant for Prigozhin's arrest for mutiny, while Moscow readied for an attack, setting up roadblocks all along the highway, about 1,000 kilometers separating Wagner Group from Putin's own security force.
Well, the last day or so has seen an extraordinary turn of events in Russia.
Защитим и наш народ, и нашу государственность от любых угроз, в том числе от внутреннего предательства.
Within hours, Putin accused his enemies on national television of betrayal and treason. Thousands of Chechen soldiers scrambled back to Moscow from Ukraine. According to state television in Chechnya, sections of highway were dug up to slow Wagner's approach. Russian media reported that by the time they had crossed about half the distance to Moscow, Wagner Group had shot down as many as 6 Russian helicopters, as well as a communications plane. This, by all appearances, looked like the beginning of an all-out civil war.
You know, in Russia, things can change very fast, and for whatever reason, they did so today.
Понимая всю ответственность за то, что будет пролита русская кровь с одной из сторон, мы разворачиваем свои колонны и уходим в обратном направлении в полевые лагеря согласно плану.
As quickly as it began, this march for justice, as Prigozhin described it, was over. Literally less than 24 hours after it began. And we don't really know why. You know, Prigozhin maintains this was always more of a protest than a coup. But in backing out, you know, did he really want to avoid shedding Russian blood, or did he just recalculate his odds of winning? You know, for an army so small to take on a country so large, you need 2 things: speed and support. Prigozhin may have had the former, but would Russia's most senior military leaders just abandon Putin? Tough call. You know, Prigozhin mentioned that this is all happening according to a plan. So that plan, the deal that was struck, involves Prigozhin being exiled to neighboring Belarus, his troops returned to the front lines, and the criminal charges against him all dropped. And so in less than 24 hours, we witnessed what appeared to be one of the most fascinating and fastest failures of our time. Now, that failure may possibly have cost Yevgeny Prigozhin his life. But what's truly unclear is what the future of the Wagner Group might be. Remember, Prigozhin, at least in some capacity, appeared to be back in charge. This Wagner Group recruitment video posted this week shows Prigozhin in Africa, gun in hand, saying that Wagner is, quote, making Russia even greater on all continents. U.S. intelligence has suggested that Wagner is no longer, quote, participating in any significant capacity in the war in Ukraine, now deep into its 2nd year. But it is training troops in Belarus, and as Prigozhin's African location might have implied, it's been active in the Central African Republic, Sudan, Mali, Niger, and Libya. So what happens to the Wagner Group now that their leader is reportedly dead?
I do think someone else is going to be announced as the head of the Wagner Group, or it will rename under a different name, under a different, they'll just name it something else and they'll put it under someone else. But the entity still will exist because Russia needs it.
Now, no matter what the Russian media reports, without outside confirmation, it's hard to know the exact truth. But it does seem clear what message Prigozhin's death sends to those who might contemplate crossing Putin in the future. We'll be right back.